Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wrestling Royalty. And I have, of course, Andy, and I'm here on a Friday evening. We are not doing any kind of best of or anything like that. No highlights packages like Raw and SmackDown this week. We are here with some brand new content. We are going to be talking about the best matches of 2023, at least in our opinion. So please let us know straight away. Really excited to hear what you guys think have been your 2023 matches. I'm going to be joined by Sam. I'm going to be joined by Dan, both of them from the Gimme Hell Yeah channel, WrestleSphere. I'm going to let them kind of introduce themselves as well. But yeah, we're going to be going through our top 5 matches each. Maybe not in any kind of particular order. Or if the guys want to kind of say their number 1 to number 5, that's as well. We've got some nice pictures to go through as well. But we are going to be talking about our top 5 each, best match of the year. We might do some special mentions as well. But always great to have everyone on board. Before I bring Sam and Dan in, I can see we've got Dean as well. He's here as always. Scenescape Shop. Hope you had a Merry Christmas and all the best for the new year. All the best to you as well, Dean, and always fantastic to see you in on a Friday night. So I'm going to bring the guys in just after this. So let's bring in the guys. Which one will you go for first? Sam was here first. He was stuffing his face with some Pringles, I could see before, but he's all clear now. And then, of course, we've got Dan as well. Looking dapper, Dan.
I finished work about 15 minutes, well, about 25 minutes ago. So I've come home, I've had something to eat. So, yeah, I'm still technically in the work stuff, so bring some class.
You could have literally have just said, I got dressed up for this show, and I would have been really happy. But you had to break my heart. But it's good to have you on anyway, looking slick as always. Speaking of slick, Mr. Sam Smith, how are you doing?
I'm all right. Before we start,
hold on. Where's the energy? Don't go, I'm all right.
Well, I was about to do something somber. That's why. I didn't know if you had planned for it, but I just thought before we get started, it might be nice just to take a minute to acknowledge that we lost Curtis Chapman. Was reported to have died this morning. Who's a big mainstay of the UK independent wrestling scene. Lots of work with Rev Pro, Progress, and everybody else in the past. You know, notable for feuding with Eddie Kingston and Minoru Suzuki. So you know, I don't know if people in America know, but that news came down the line today. So I just thought I'd have a quick drink to Mad Kurt. Before we get going, you know what I mean? That's why I didn't have my usual energy. But I don't want to bring us down. We've got some good stuff to talk about. I just thought might be a nice thing just to acknowledge before we get going.
Yeah, our thoughts go out to the friends and family, of course, of Kurt. And yes, very good point to bring up. But as he would probably the man himself as well would say, like he's a celebration of wrestling. And 2023 has been a massive year for wrestling, from sold-out shows at Wembley, a return of CM Punk back to WWE, Money in the Bank in this country. We've had Elimination Chamber in Canada. So this was probably the year again where, more so than any other year I can remember, where wrestling became global again. The big one, big promotions going all over. Impact went to Australia and had a sort of down under tour and across in the UK. So not limited just to AEW and WWE, but this has been a massive year for all promotions. And we're going to be covering some of them. I'm excited to kind of talk about this. I've been putting together the sort of slides for this one off the basis of Dan, Sam, and myself's lists that we have for our top 5. Just before I go into it, guys, have you got yours in order that you sent me over? Because I haven't put them maybe in that order. I've just kind of spiced it up a little bit. So,
well, I've got all mine on my phone and I've got them in my memory, so I should be all right.
No worries. Well, we have some prompts. So the way we're going to do this is I've got Dan's and then mine and then Sam's for the 5. And then it'll go back round to the start as well. So none of us will be talking for too long, so you don't have to worry about us sending you to sleep.
Have you not met Sam before?
Well, that's why I almost thought, shall I put some sort of counter on to make sure people only have like a couple of minutes?
I won't need it today. I'm short and succinct. I know what I'm going to say. And I want to get back to playing Diablo 4. So don't you worry.
Fair enough.
No stream tonight. No stream because SmackDown are having one of them best of episodes, so there's no point us really doing a stream tonight. So
nah, that's why I didn't
I
bother
got
with
right
Raw.
off.
You have every week off anyway, so Dean's wearing his tux to match Dan's lovely work outfit there as well. And unfortunately, Rock versus Hogan, you have to go back a few years. That wasn't 2023, but let's face it, Dean has probably watched that at some point this year, which is always a good one to recall. So yeah, put together this. So we're going to kick off with Dan's one of Dan's picks, and the way this is going to work is Dan's going to introduce sort of why he enjoyed this and why this makes his top 5 of the year. So we're going to start off with as Sheamus would say, a banger at WrestleMania 39. So Dan, take it away, mate. What was so special about this one?
Yeah, I mean, we did a stream on the Gimme Julia channel, our sort of peaks and troughs of 2023 favourite match, favourite wrestler, favourite story, favourite gimmick, stuff like that. And one of the sections was favourite match. So I couldn't start this list without talking about the match that I put forward for my match of the year candidate on Gimme Julia. So Gunther versus Sheamus versus McIntyre, IC title. It was, if I remember rightly, a 5-star match from Dave Meltzer, which for WWE is a great start. It's the match out of the full WrestleMania card that I've gone back and watched probably 3 or 4 times since then, because, I mean, one, we was all in the crowd, so watching it live is a different experience. That might have helped hype my point of it was just that good of a match. And then again, watching it back with the camera angles that you get, some of the moves just look even more impactful. And we know these guys like to put on a show. We know these guys like a very strong, hard, physical style. And every single person in the match got a bit of a showcase. They got a good set of moves on their opponents. The intermingling storyline with Drew and Sheamus was good. The Sheamus needing to win the IC title to be a Grand Slam champion made even more sort of intriguing. And walking into the match, you just didn't have an inkling of who would win, whether Drew would turn on Sheamus, whether Sheamus would get that Grand Slam, whether Gunther would come back out as the longest reigning champion. It was just such compelling story, match, occasion as well. And I don't think there was a better match on the WrestleMania card. We will get to another one a bit later on from myself, but out of the whole year, this to me is my match of the year. So that's why I wanted to start quite strong with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the one question I'd ask you on this one is, what was it that, and this might sound a little bit strange because obviously it was a triple threat match rather. The match last year at Clash at the Castle in Cardiff went down as a storm between Sheamus and Gunther. What was it about this match, and did it kind of go above that, or was there anything in particular that you would say that kind of made this potentially even better?
I think, I mean, again, I was at Clash of the Castle, so seeing Gunther versus Sheamus as a one-on-one match was absolutely fantastic. But I think with the addition of Drew and the sort of different ways that it could have gone for every single participant, I think it elevated it a lot more. Just because I know a lot of people don't like that triple threat concept because someone's always going to have to take a pin. But I think all 3 guys came out looking stronger. I don't think any person in the match lost any sort of momentum from it. So for me, WrestleMania 39 was Clash at the Castle, but ramped up even more. And Clash at the Castle was obviously 2022, so I couldn't use that in this list.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think this is one of those ones where when you speak to certain wrestlers and you ask them about triple threat matches, the one that always comes up is AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe versus Christopher Daniels as like one of the all-time triple threat matches. This feels like it's one that is actually going to be used in the same air.
Yeah.
So, really interesting to see triple threat match kicking us off as well. So that was Dan's first pick. We'll move on to
Sorry, guys, just want to say about that one. It had the right result, I thought, as well. because it's made Gunther look even stronger. And it was nice that those two walked out. The other two walked out friends, despite both losing. I thought that was a nice touch. But great match. I preferred the one that Clash at the Castle. I honestly did, but I thought, but that was what an awesome moment that one was.
The other thing I'm going to say, by the way, is I had originally a couple of the same matches down as Dan, but Sam and Dan's are different. So I decided, you know what, I'll throw 5 completely different ones out there so everyone gets a completely different perspective and kind of ideas as well. So my first one I've got down here is Carmelo Hayes versus Dragunov. If you listened to the show last week on Give Me a Hell Yeah for the end of year awards, you would have heard me wax lyrical about Carmelo Hayes versus Dragunov. But I will kind of keep it succinct here. For me, if you don't watch NXT, this is what NXT is about these days. Perfect showcase of, it's moved away from the sort of character, very sort of family friendly, almost cartoonish feel that it had for a little while, somewhere into a bit more of a mix with the sort of black and gold era where it was all about the wrestling and, like storylines are there, but more real and very much how the main roster is looking these days. But this showcased to me 2 guys who have massive futures within the company. I can see this match playing again out in a WWE Premium Live event in the next few years. Both guys will, in my opinion, be up in the main roster in the next 12 months, I'd say, depending on what they've got left down in NXT. But this was actually, I believe, was the second of their matches. The first one, the Great American Bash, where Carmelo Hayes managed to retain the title. But here we saw Hayes and Dragunov kind of have just slug it out. We're used to seeing Hayes as very much a cool customer. Everything's very kind of smooth and skillful and slick in the ring. Whereas here he was really dragged down into a sort of like, like a dirty sort of almost brawl that Dragunov seems to bring out of people. So for me, if you want to see anything about NXT in 2023, this is the perfect showcase to go back and watch this and see what the sort of upper echelon of that promotion is looking like. But yeah, we've seen Carmelo Hayes move up to SmackDown for a couple of matches. We had one against Kevin Owens last week in the US title tournament that's going on. And even before that, I believe he had a great match, in my opinion, against Grayson Waller, showing some fantastic moves between the two of them. So they've both got great futures. And Dragunov could end up being eventually the one who comes up and beats Gunther, as they've got a storied past together. So that was my first pick. And we're going to move over to Sam, who I've got down as Adam Cole, baby, versus MJF at All in London, which had a little bit of an interesting dynamic, which I think might be why it's made the list for Sam. So, Sam, I'll let you take this one away.
Well, this was actually my top match. So we're kind of starting with the best first. Is that deliberate? But fair enough. I didn't know we were counting down or anything, but there's no particular order. We're all good. So again, I was there in person. Dan, I know you were there with us as well. This one kept me quiet for 20 minutes, which never happens. Dom even said to me at one point, I've never seen you so focused, so watching something so intently. And I was like, it's this match, mate, because it's easily one of the best matches we've had this year, just objectively speaking, whether you like AEW or New Japan or whatever. This was great. That bit where he goes 5 more minutes and he goes, no, Adam, we're going to keep going until there's a winner in effing Wembley. It got such a raucous pop from the crowd. There were some absolutely spots. There was the whole drama of them also being friends as well. And a lot of people thought Cole would turn on MJF because both of them are such career heels here, being such big baby faces. It reminded me of some of the classic matches from back in the day in the territories. If 2 baby faces ever ended up in front of each other, which wasn't often, but when it happened, this is the sort of thing that they had. Heels and faces was a much bigger thing back then. But I just thought it was an awesome match, an awesome finish. Everything about it was great. And it finished with them saying, look, we're coming back next year. See you again next year. I've just got nothing but I also think it's the match where we already knew Adam Cole was world class and brilliant at what he does. But there was a lot of people on the fence about MJF because he's a bit of a Roman Reigns, a bit of a John Cena at times, works a select few moves in a certain pattern, but he's started not doing that now. He's doing more high spots. He's a lot more unpredictable. There was a point where Cole thought he had killed him or injured him. It was just great, and I think that's it. Really, it was just one of the greatest matches I've seen. In fact, no, it was my favourite match I've seen in 2023.
Fantastic, and yeah, even as someone who kind of tries to dip the toe into AEW from then now and again, this is one match that I really wanted to see. Being a big Adam Cole fan, as you can see on here, but yeah, personally, I was really interested from the perspective of these guys being best friends. You often hear whether heel versus heel and face versus face can work, but how does a respectful sort of best friend thing go? After this is the night earlier in the night, sorry, they'd had a tag team match as well, right? Which is not the easiest task because you kind of get the initial pop for these guys coming out, and then they're going to have to close the show out as well, which just seems very difficult, in 2023 to keep people interested after that long time, especially then going into that kind of match as well. So yeah, fantastic job, even from sort of someone who I would say I'm a fan of AEW, but I don't kind of watch. I'm not a hardcore fan. I don't watch it week in, week out. This is one I had to watch. So great pick for your number one there, Sam.
It was great as well because everybody expected some kind of surprise here, either a run-in or a one of them turning on the other in some dark way, or Roderick Strong, or like just something playing into it. And the surprise was there was no surprise. They just got in there, they got it on, and they left together. With MJF as the better man. It was just great.
Fantastic. So we're going to swing back around to Dan, who picked a match that we're going to see a different venue on later on here. I think it actually might be in a couple of slides' time. But we've got Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay at Forbidden Door for Dan's pick.
Yeah. I did debate doing the Wrestle Kingdom version of the match, which is probably the one that we have got coming up. But I literally, not last night before, I went back and watched this match, and I don't know if, from a technical standpoint, there has been a better match this year. You could argue we've had Danielson versus Zack Sabre Jr. for technicality, but in terms of a professional wrestler and taking every aspect of the gimmick, the character, the in-ring performance, the story, I don't think a match has hit every single point out of the park, and on a bigger scale in terms of the global audience, because Wrestle Kingdom is great for the dedicated and the Asian market, but the United States market, the European market, with the AEW sort of opening that Forbidden Door, it's brought these two characters onto the absolute best of the global scale. And Kenny Omega, I think at this point, was going back to his cleaner level of being able to tell a story in the ring, but having Will Ospreay opposite him, I think just completed that jigsaw piece of how good can we make a story and a match. There was the United States Championship IWGP belt on the line, so it gave it another little bit of trepidation of who could win. And with Will Ospreay winning, we ended up getting a UK title now in New Japan, which is awesome. So to me, sitting and watching this match again, I'll probably watch it again in another 3 or 4 weeks, because I can just sit and watch it all day long. It goes on, I think it's about 38 minutes, and it flies by. Some matches you see go on for 15, 20 minutes, and it does feel like it drags, but these two don't hold up. They don't actually stop, and they absolutely tear the place down for me. And you can't blame them. They are the absolute peak of professional wrestlers and not sports entertainers.
And the question I have for you here, and I don't want to kind of put him, like too much on blast.
Go for it.
Dean, I know for a fact doesn't watch anything outside of WWE. In fact, outside of the sort of main roster, that's what he enjoys to watch, and that's kind of what he's steeped in. Why should he spend the time that kind of almost 40 minutes of his time to go watch this match? If you had to sum that up in like a couple of sentences, what is it that would hook him in as a wrestling fan?
If you are a professional wrestling fan and not a sports entertainer fan, you're going to like it anyway. But if you want to see two guys go out there and put everything on the line, you don't even need to know any part of the story to enjoy this professional wrestling match. It's short, it's simple in terms of it's two guys going in there, and you're not going to get the theatrics of a WWE show. But if you want to watch a bare bones wrestling match, the phrase balls to the wall makes it probably the best way to do it. I was just reading that comment.
No,
these two don't need the smoke, the mirrors, or anything like that. They don't hide behind anything. And if you gave them the time of day to sit and watch it, you probably would be hooked on them wrestling. And then you'd probably go and watch their first match, or if you want to watch their first match, so you know the basis of the story, then come to watch this one, you will see that these two are the elite of the elite. And why I think 2 out of 3 years, it's been these two at the top of the PWI list, which it says it all for them.
Absolutely. We'll go on to my next one, which was Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens versus the Usos at WrestleMania 39. You'll see there's a few matches from WrestleMania 39 pop up, and obviously it has the added luxury of being 2 days, so it has a lot bigger a card. But this was, to me, one of the best tag team matches that you'll see, not just this year, but in a long time as well. There's a reason why this was the first tag team match since WrestleMania 1 to main event at WrestleMania, or at least one night at WrestleMania. This was the culmination of a very long rivalry and just a massive build that sort of just ended with this crescendo at WrestleMania. And it had everything. And it was also the fact that we've got Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, who are two guys who have worked their way together through the indies, through NXT, all the way through. And it felt like a massive reward for them. But even for the Usos, who have had years, and they've been around for, I think, it might even be about 12 years now or so in some way, shape or form. And there's been WrestleManias where they've been bumped from the card. There've been WrestleManias where they've been on the pre-show. And this was just testament to all four guys' work and to have the biggest stage in the world, in the biggest stage in the industry to tell this story on was fantastic. And they didn't disappoint either. The crowd was into it from start to finish. There were near falls. That last sort of emotional outpouring from Sami to finish the match off when he got that last haluva kick in just sent everyone inside SoFi Stadium absolutely bananas as well. So it was a fantastic moment for them to bring down the curtain on night one. And there's another one that we'll see that could have had a chance to main event, but this was definitely the right choice, and they absolutely nailed it. So for my choice, within my top 5 is Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens versus the Usos, and give me something of this ilk every WrestleMania, and I'll be absolutely ecstatic. We've just heard about Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega at Forbidden Door. Now we're going to hear Sam, and the first question I'm going to ask you here is why this match and not the Forbidden Door one that Dan has just waxed lyrical about? What was so special about the Wrestle Kingdom match, which was the first one all the way back in January?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because that's the very reason I picked this one and not the other one. It's because for years now we've been watching AEW. The promise of AEW was we're going to see Kenny Omega on a big stage now. You know, this is like Kenny Omega WWE level or something like that. And we've never really got it, apart from a bit at the beginning. he's often in tag matches with multiple people, and which are great. That's fun. Golden Lovers with with the Bucks. Okay, that's cool. It was good. We got it kind of when he was a heel champion, but back then he was quite cowardly and a typical heel, so we didn't really see the cleaner Kenny, that New Japan. There was one point where he was the biggest bargaining chip in wrestling, and WWE wanted him, AEW wanted him, and he was on PW Inside's top 500 as number one. He was the guy. He was the guy to beat, and in many ways he still is. But I had been disenchanted with Kenny Omega. I didn't feel like we actually got what was being offered to us and promised to us with AEW until this match. And it needed Omega to go back to New Japan for one night only in order to rediscover that. I do personally, I just want to caveat all these by saying I don't think these are the best matches of the year. These are my favorites of the year. If we were filling this with a list of, I can hear Misfit somewhere frantically typing, bless him. If you're watching Misfit, hello. Again, if we were filling this with the best matches, they would probably all be New Japan matches. Sorry, they would be. But no, for me, this reinvigorated Kenny Omega. It made him interesting again. Ospreay's just sheer perfection as well. So getting this, and we'd never seen these two meet with Ospreay at this level. Ospreay at this point was the big supervillain in New Japan. Overtaking Omega and Jay White before him. All these things, he was the guy. And this finally gave me something I really wanted to see. And this match held my attention from start to finish. I think I'm on stream watching it, and you can just see me all the way through it. I was nearly quiet for half an hour watching it. I had to talk. I was like, oh, and then I went back and watched it later again. I was like, oh, so good. Like the other one is good. The Forbidden Door one is cracking. Great match. But it's, the Forbidden Door was opened here, and this is the thing that had the novelty, and this was the match that made me think, oh, thank God, he's still the Kenny Omega. Forbidden Door continued that, but this is what reassured me, and it's that reassurance that made me, and the fact that it was a wicked match as well. So this one I won't forget in a hurry.
Great. Just as Dan has popped off, we go to his. What we'll do is just while Dan, I'm not sure where he's gone, we'll go on to my next one, which was the Survivor Series War Games match for the women. Because personally, I thought the women's match was fantastic from start to finish. Again, maybe it's just me. When I look for things in wrestling, I love the storyline aspect of it. Like, what's the story behind everything? And the story of Damage Control and them kind of running roughshod over the women's division over on SmackDown has dominated for weeks. And this was kind of like the big blow off to all of that. We had really cool entrances. We had the War Games match itself, and the fact that we managed to see little things within the match that also made a lot of sense. So we had to see Becky and Charlotte kind of bury the hatchet a lot as well, which if you were kind of a casual fan, you might not have even known anything was going on. It was a very nice touch for those who have kind of been waiting for those two to reconcile, because they had famously a big blow off when they were trading the belts, when they'd been drafted separate ways, that didn't, well, depending on who you believe, didn't go the way it was supposed to, and it all kind of like flared a little bit backstage as well, no pun intended. But yeah, we had that moment. We had Shotzi, who has kind of been on, I guess, on the outskirts of the women's division to a certain degree, and has been the one who's taken a lot of pinfalls. She had some fantastic moments in this match as well, so it was real coming out for her. Bianca Belair was doing her thing as she always does, and kind of like showing how she's, I guess, almost the John Cena of the women's division these days, but she kind of showcased everything that she is here. But we also got to see little bits and pieces like Bayley being the one who was making the saves all the time, and how that would feature like moving forward into Damage Control, and would she get kicked out because she was the one who took the pinfall in the end, but she was arguably the MVP for that team. So yeah, really interested to see how how this progresses in the future. But this match itself was just a spectacle, which a War Games match should be. So it's why it made my list, because I thought every single one of these 8, and also Dakota Kai on the outside, did a fantastic job of bringing the match together. And Dean, this match was great opener. That last that put herself in the bin. He's talking about Io Sky and threw herself off the cage was great. I tried to explain it to my wife the next day, and she thought I was drunk. Yeah, it's not very often that you see someone launch themselves in a trash can to get back on. So we're going to see if we can bring Dan back in. I think he's still having a little bit of problems with his camera.
I thought you got for a wee like I did.
No, not sure what's going on with Dan. So while Dan's just sorting that out, no rush, Dan, if you can hear us. We'll move on to one of Sam's picks, where he picked a famous night up in Canada, where this match was the culmination of something that happened at Royal Rumble. So, Sam, talk us through.
Yeah, so I haven't picked this match because it was, necessarily a 5-star banger, Meltzer style. I picked this match because of the storytelling elements. This was just on the heels of Sami finally turning on Roman, which was such a moment. I don't think anything has quite held my interest in wrestling quite like that little bit, like a little snippet of time. Like I know this whole story is still going on, and has its conclusion needs to kind of, or at least its next evolution needs to come along. But this was a massive turning point in that story. Sami went from a heel to a babyface overnight to an overwhelming one. He had the crowd on his side. Roman was talking to his wife. This is almost like two family members arguing kind of feud in a way. I think Roman won. The right person won. It was kind of a bit of the same match we've seen a few times now with Roman Reigns, but I actually don't really mind that as long as they mix it up and do some good storytelling as well, which is exactly what they did here. It's hard to put into words. A friend of mine was actually in the crowd as well, and they said the atmosphere was just ridiculous. This is a real moment for Sami Zayn. Like, a lot of people dared to believe. I didn't personally, but it was great to see someone standing up to Roman this way. Roman, this might have been apart from WrestleMania, this might have been the closest he had come to losing as well. Sami hung with him and proved that he's a main event guy. I don't know if it's quite elevated. Like, Sami Zayn is still one of the most overstars in the company, but I feel like LA Knight has kind of taken that role now, where WWE were a bit worried at one point that Sami was more over than Cody, so kept on partnering them up just to make sure each one had the rub, which is fine. I get it, makes sense. But yeah, it's just the storytelling of this whole bloodline thing, the honorary use, and it's just, this was one of those moments where I'm kind of sad because I don't know at what point wrestling's ever going to get this good from a drama point of view again. Now, has it peaked? Because everyone was saying this was one of the best storylines in years, if not the best story in years. And I can't wait. It's not done. I do think Sami has to factor in to this story again at some point, even if it's only in a passing way or as a indirect kind of way. But there's still things that need to pay off from this match. But it was the story here. The story of this match just had me glued to it.
Yeah, and as Dan said as well, the entrance for Sami, we were lucky this year that there was quite a few big pops, but that's up there with Bad Bunny in Puerto Rico. It's up there with John Cena returning Money in the Bank. So Sami Zayn in front of his hometown crowd, or as close as his hometown as you could get, it was something truly special, for not just for him but for WWE and the fans up in Canada as well. So I remember being on Scott's pre-show for Rebellious Noise Wrestling and talking about it, and this is the sort of that everyone was talking about. Is like, are they going to put the belt on Sami? Is this going to happen? And everyone would kind of be like, no, I don't think so. But there was always that shred of doubt, and they did so well to just kind of be like, you might think it might not happen, but anything is possible, and certainly 2023 has shown that as well. While we're talking, sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry, dude. Yeah, I was going to say a mate of mine was at a gaming event in Canada for work, and he was at a loose end because he was staying over. You know, he's in a foreign country, and he's thinking, "What do I do with myself this evening?" And then I thought, "Oh my God, Elimination Chamber's on down the road. I wonder if I can get a ticket." And he does, and then turns up, and then as the night of his life. I just thought it was such a cool story. Sorry, you were going to say.
No, I was just going to say I mentioned Scott from Rebellious Noise Wrestling, and that's one of the sort of the channels that we're friends with over here at Wrestling Royalty. Scott was going to try and join us, but he has sent me through, rather than the matches, we'll take a brief interlude from matches. He sent me across his top 5 moments of 2023, kicking off with Sami Zayn at the Royal Rumble. He said we knew it wouldn't happen. We knew it would happen eventually, but it doesn't change how perfectly it was executed. Probably the best moment of the whole year and one of the best in the modern era. Of course, Sami Zayn taking a steel chair to the back of Roman Reigns. Number 2, the Usos turn on Roman, the "if he's out, I'm out too" moment. Similar to the above, a lot of messy and awkward turns within the bloodline, but the way this one unfolded was spine-tingling. Honourable mention was Jay kicking Sami on the ramp, but that was probably 22 going back a little bit further than that. But yeah, that moment where Jay and Jimmy finally kind of like broke out, whether you agree with what happened afterwards, where Jimmy's kind of flip-flopped back again to the bloodline, that was again a nice moment for the Usos, which also led to that main event in Money in the Bank in London as well, which is a great match and great moment, and not on any of our lists, but I'm sure it would have been close on a few. Number 3, CM Punk's return. If you want to hear a little bit more about CM Punk's return from our perspective, you can go back and watch last week's stream, which had Sam on as well. And then even before that, myself and Dan caught up about CM Punk's return in the kind of couple of days after Survivor Series this year as well. So the channel has covered that ad nauseum. So please go back and watch that. Number 4, he gave us Cena returning at Money in the Bank. Some great returns this year, some amazing moments at Money in the Bank alone. Scott said he was close to including the general buzz of LA Knight and his 2 entries at the O2 that weekend. The shock factor of Cena was magical. So much fun, and that's what wrestling's all about, really. Possibly biased because we were all there, but what a moment. So check out the interviews from Money in the Bank weekend, which you can check out for my channel. You can check out over on WrestleSphere with Sam and Dom interviews. But you can also check out even more content from that weekend over at Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling. So if you want to kind of see some of your favorite wrestlers, Santos Escobar being an absolute favorite of mine that weekend, you can go check out those 3 channels and drop each of them a subscribe. So that's Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling, Wrestling Royalty, and WrestleSphere. And make sure you follow Gimme Hoya and give them a subscribe too. And the last one for him was The Rock appearing on SmackDown. He said he wasn't sure about including this one, but an unexpected Rock return not to be on the list would be absolutely mad. He loved it. He just wonders if he should have exceeded it because probably it wasn't spoiled for the shock factor, because there was a little bit of buzz that he was around the area with Pat McAfee as well. But yes, I'm sure Dean would agree. He's still watching on The Rock returning on SmackDown. And then also the buzz that kind of created is, would he come back for WrestleMania 40? Which obviously, if it does, it'd be interesting to see how he is included and if it does at all. Anyway, we'll go back. Dan, you were having some technical difficulties, so we will rewind a little bit. And your next pick was the Stadium Stampede match at All In. So you're going to have to maybe explain who's involved here, what it's about, and why you loved it so much.
Let me just bring it up because there was quite a few people that was in it. I'm just bringing it up.
While you're doing that, I was kind of surprised that in this Eddie Kingston wasn't wearing something from a London team rather than I don't even know where Ewing's is. He a New York Nets?
I think so. Yeah,
he's a New York guy, isn't he? Kingston. He's very big on his love of New York in general. So, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. But anyway, because none of us are apparently very on top of our basketball game, I'm hoping I've stalled long enough for Dan to have found who was included here. because, as he said, there were quite a few people, and this one is spanned all the way around Wembley Stadium. So, Dan, have I waffled long enough for you to find out the participants?
Thank you very much. That's what a good host does. So we had Eddie Kingston, Penta El Zero Miedo, Best Friends, which was Chuck Taylor, Trent Beretta, and Orange Cassidy going up against the Blackpool Combat Club, which comprised of Claudio Castagnoli, John Moxley, Wheeler Yuta, and then you also had Santana and Ortiz teaming up with them. And I picked this one because it was just absolute chaos. It was absolutely insane from start to finish, which is the whole point of these matches. Again, it was one where I don't know if being in the crowd made a big difference, because some of the bits that was happening wasn't being shown on the big screens. So again, this is a match. Well, it's a full show. I went back and rewatched, and again, this match from start to finish had me absolutely glued, because with the proper camera set up and the switches between the participants, you was constantly switching between different people, different stories, and different areas of the arena. So it felt like 3 or 4 different matches in one at some points, because you had Ortiz and Santana going up against the Best Friends. Then a bit later on, you had the Best Friends going up against Moxley and then Yuta, and you just didn't know how it was going to end, who was going to get the pinfall. There was a fraction of a little bit of a blooper where the ladder seemed to break as someone was climbing up it. I can't remember who, because there was that many people. But it didn't take away from the match, because it was all about the chaos. We know that the match was made for the lockdown era of wrestling as a cinematic style match, and there was a little bit of trepidation whether that match could actually work in a live arena setup with a live crowd. And I think this match epitomized the fact that, oh yes, it can, and it can keep people gripped, and it can be super entertaining. There was some very violent spots. Moxley had, I can't remember what it was, kebab skewers in his head, which was an absolute unbelievable visual. There was, I think, did Kingston do a flip off part of the part of one of the entrances? I don't know. There was that much going on. It was just absolute entertainment. And going from the one that I said earlier on, if people haven't been an AEW fan, but they like stuff like, from WWE standpoint, a boiler room brawl style match, this to me takes that boiler room brawl and expands on it to involve as many people as possible, which is great fun.
I think it kind of reminded me a little bit of, do you remember the Royal Rumble 2000 where the Hardys and the Dudleys kind of fight almost around
tables?
Yeah.
It's
similar like that, but like on steroids, effectively. Like, it's just like kind of just massive in comparison. And I say it's almost like chaos, but in the best way possible. You just don't know where to look. There's certain things going on, and I'd hate to be any kind of producer for that match, because there were so many spots. There's so many people going off their different ways. But it's almost, when you're in a stadium, it's nice for the fans to not have to just focus on the ring and nothing else. So as you say, it might have been that first one, and it was in the cinematic era, but seeing it translate into, well, these guys over in block 104 actually got a good view of these two guys going at it, and the guys on the other side of the stadium might be able to see something else. And sometimes that's what you kind of don't want to see in a live match, but in setting. But this worked very well and translated even better than I think people were expecting. Tom Talks Rubbish, another friend of the channel. Hello, Tom. Hope you're having a great Friday evening. Thank you for joining us. His shout is MJF versus Danielson in the Iron Man match. That's a great shout. Again, another one of those ones that even people who haven't been following AEW, if you are a wrestling fan, you'll have had some sort of consciousness about that match in particular. I believe, is that the one that people were a little bit annoyed at the finish, maybe, on that one?
I don't think so, because that's the one that I think MJF was like, we'll carry on until we've got a winner as well. I know I did the same with Adam Cole, but yeah, that one, again, it was that one or Omega versus Ospreay for me, Tom. That was the first one. I had the second one on my list, but it was just such a close call. That's my absolute honourable mention from me.
Fair enough. And also, because I'm an absolute consummate professional, I can tell you Eddie Kingston's wearing a New York Knicks Patrick Ewing vintage jersey there, which is obviously his team from back across in the States. And maybe he just doesn't feel comfortable wearing a UK. And let's face it, we haven't got many basketball teams that you'd probably want to shout about in America. Our standards are a bit different in the BBL across here. But yeah, he was repping the New York Knicks there. So we'll go back and circle round. And Danny, straight back up again, I believe, for this one. We've got Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte and another match at WrestleMania 39. And this is the first one of the list. And I will explain a little bit more context behind this that features... well, it's not. We've got the multi-women match. It was the first one-on-one match between two women on this show. So why was this one so special?
I think for me, as women's wrestling goes, this is the absolute peak of a WWE style women's match. I did have a look at some women's matches from AEW, but I don't think any had the history that these two have had together. I think it was one of the lockdown matches where Charlotte beat Rhea for the NXT title, if I remember rightly, at WrestleMania. Yeah, there was history behind it. I think since then Charlotte has grown, but Rhea Ripley has grown exponentially. The Judgment Day faction has helped elevate Rhea, and seeing Rhea get that win that she so massively deserved on the biggest stage that she could, and doing it in front of a live crowd this time, I think it just made everything perfect for Rhea. She's been one of the best workers, I think, in the ring for probably 5-6 years in WWE, NXT, and NXT UK. She had some great matches with Toni Storm when she first was in NXT UK. And since then, she's just shot through the roof, and she's taken the character work to another level. She's taken the in-ring work to another level. She's elevated Dom to the most despicable heel on the planet. And I think, if I remember rightly, this was the very first all-women match from a performer standpoint and a refereeing standpoint as well. So I think the female referee is called Jessica. I can't remember her last name for the life of me.
Jessica
Carr, that's the one, yeah. So even being able to referee a women's match at WrestleMania, it was history making at that point already. But every single thing, I think, worked on the night. The outcome was the right choice. The in-ring work was absolutely fantastic. There was a lot of heat on Charlotte because a lot of people think that Charlotte gets this sort of silver spoon and gets fed everything, which could be true at certain times. But on the biggest stage, she understood that she had to do the job, and she did the job and sold very well for Rhea, making Rhea Ripley look $1 million, maybe even $1 billion. It was that good of a match for me.
Yeah, and as I alluded to earlier on, there were heavy rumours. You knew it when you were in LA that it was, is this match going to close night one, or was it going to be the tag match that closed night one? Now, these obviously didn't get to close it, but they made damn sure that everyone was talking about them by the end of the night as well anyway. Yeah, another fantastic choice. This was the match, in my opinion, where Rhea Ripley, as you said, really arrived on the grandest stage in the best way possible. And as like Charlotte does get a bit of a bad rep for maybe only kind of delivering on the bigger stage, but when you deliver like this, it's very hard to argue against, and you can kind of see why. But yeah, this was the best of Charlotte Flair and the best of Rhea Ripley, and it's one of those matches where it probably up there when in 20 years' time, if you were putting together a top 10 list of women's matches, this would feature very highly on that match card. So another choice from WrestleMania 39. This one was my choice, a bit of left field because you guys know that I like to bring some sort of alternate choice. This is from Backlash in Puerto Rico, where we had Io Sky versus Bianca Belair. And the main reason for me picking this one was because on a night where a lot of people were talking about Bad Bunny versus Damian Priest, for me, this was such a good match. Probably a bit underappreciated, really. If you go back and watch it, both women just absolutely shine throughout the whole thing. Bianca Belair, as you can see from this picture, was selling that she was kind of like her shoulder was badly hurt, but just look at the sort of visual of someone like Bianca Belair being able to have Io Sky up on one hand. She showed her superhuman strength. I said earlier on that she might be the kind of John Cena of the women's division, and this is why she kind of gives off that that aura of never give up and kind of just like powering through and getting the job done, no matter like how hurt you are, you get back up, etc. And this is like, if you kind of put a body of work together for Bianca Belair, I would hazard a guess that this and maybe the Sasha Banks match at WrestleMania over in Tampa, that's probably the two matches that you want to put together. It kind of really shows off who she is. Now we know Bianca would then take a little bit of time out not long after this when Io cashed in her Money in the Bank, but this is also Io's first massive match on the main roster, in my opinion. So I personally thought this was a great match that not a lot of people would maybe feature on their list. But when I go throughout the year, I try and note down odd matches that I've watched to make sure at the end of the year I can go back and go, oh, actually, that was as good as I thought it was at the time. So I would definitely implore you, if you haven't watched this one before, or even if it's been a while since you've watched it, go back and watch it and see two supremely talented women doing what they do best. And we will move on. We mentioned Eddie Kingston before, and Sam picked Claudio Castagnoli versus Eddie Kingston in a title versus title match at the Grand Slam Premium Live event, or whatever the hell AEW call theirs. Probably just pay-per-views, really. Sam, take it away.
Yeah, quickly before I do, about Charlotte delivering on pay-per-views. That's the whole point of the pay-per-view. That's why it's a premium live event. That's where you're meant to see that stuff. Like, yeah, we want to see people wrestle on live shows and stuff like that, but that's where the A game should be brought. So I think Charlotte's people like Cody Rhodes do the same thing. John Cena always did it. Roman does it. It's the way it should be done. Anyway, so this match here, speaking of where it should be brought, so this was just amazing because we've seen this match a couple of times before in different guises, and the story here is Eddie can't beat Claudio, and what's amazing about this match is this is the point where he finally did. Not only did he retain his New Japan Strong Championship, he also won the Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Championship for the first time in his life. And the storyline here was, Eddie, you're a bit of a bum. You drink, you eat, you don't go to the gym as often as me. Claudio was I'm all about being an athlete. He was a bit elitist in the way he came across. Eddie was Dusty Rhodes here. He was the working man. He was the every man. He was your dad. You know, he was all of these people. And the story is, well, Eddie might not be as disciplined as Claudio. He makes up for it in heart. And where he might not have the some of the technical aptitude that Claudio has, or he has street smarts and brawling ability. So it's a complete styles clash, but this time Eddie got the win. And it was for years I wanted Eddie Kingston to be acknowledged and to hold don't get me wrong, New Japan's strong belt is great, but it's not a world championship like the AEW one, the Ring of Honor one, the WWE. You know, they're the big belts. They're the ones that you've got to hold. And I still think before Eddie hangs up his hat, he does need to hold the AEW one. But this is a start. This is Tony Khan testing the water to see if Eddie could be the guy even for a while, and I think he can. And this was the day where a lot of people who invested in Eddie Kingston finally are now daring to dream. And let's not take away from Claudio, like the guy's impervious to a bad match. He's just amazing, and it was only after getting out of WWE did we really start appreciating him, because they just didn't know what to do with him. It's the same old story sometimes. Here, now he's back to Claudio, and he's not Cesaro. He's just booked as a killer, be a babyface or a heel. He's a killer. He's the guy who ties you in knots and snaps you into things. You know, his feud with Chris Jericho was pretty awful, because his silly swinging gimmick became a finishing move, unbelievably terrible. But here, like, they've taken him back to basics. And what's great about this is this storyline has been kind of playing out since old school Ring of Honor for many, many, many years. So to actually, and it might not even be over, but to see this chapter of it, Eddie Kingston finally get what he's been chasing, was really cathartic and really rewarding for people who follow both of these men, wherever it is they may have gone over the years. You know, right now, Eddie's still defending both belts in a tournament in AEW, and he had a really shaky start, but he's kind of clawing his way back up in the rankings. I personally think he's going to win it, retain both these belts and win the new AEW belt. So he's going to hold a belt from each company and also be a Triple Crown champion. I think the future is bright for Eddie Kingston. I don't want to take away from Claudio, because the guy's just awesome and can bring a brilliant match out of anybody. But these two guys, you know, I think could wrestle main event at WrestleMania. They probably never will, but I also don't think they need to. I think they're doing just fine where they are.
Absolutely. And that brings us on, I believe, to each of our last picks of our top 5 of the year. And this one is a relatively recent match as well that Dan's gone for NXT Deadline. So nice to see someone else, not just myself, picking an NXT match. And I think there's a very good reason why, and it might just be something to do with the last 90 seconds of the match. But yeah, Dan, you tell us in your words why the men's Iron Survivor Challenge match was featured in your top 5.
I did just put a comment in saying that Eddie Kingston always reminds me of Kevin Owens, because they've got so much heart, they've got so much passion, and sometimes don't get the plaudits they deserve. And Sam absolutely put Kingston over, and I agree completely. And I just wanted to add that little point on, because Eddie just, you know, everyone would love him to win the World Championship, no matter where he is. But sometimes it reminds me of Tommy Dreamer, where sometimes it's the chase of the title that is always better than actually winning the title.
Yeah.
For me, that match proved otherwise. For me, that do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it totally is. Like right now with Cody, that's absolutely the case, and a few other things. And with Sami Zayn and Kevin winning the tag belts, it was absolutely the case. It was all about that, them, and not the belts, really. I don't think they even needed those belts. They needed the victory. But I think for Kevin, Kingston and Owens are just also two guys that punch you in the face if you look at them funny. I love that, you know, that bruiser gimmick that they both have. KO's another one who I absolutely adore. It took me years to appreciate him as well, but now I do. Anyway, where.
But yeah, I occasionally dabble with NXT, and I was more interested actually in the Dragunov versus Baron Corbin match, just because I think Ilya Dragunov's probably one of the best in-ring wrestlers in NXT, and has been for a long while, probably since Adam Cole level, Johnny Gargano. But I was sat watching the full pay-per-view and premium live event, and I was never, in all honesty, a fan of the Iron Survivor match. I always thought, why not just do the championship scramble from Unforgiven? Do a 30-minute match, championship scramble. Whoever gets the last pinfall at the 30-minute mark is the champion. I thought that was a great concept, and I still want WWE to bring it back. With Triple H at the Realm, I hope they do. But I sat and watched the women's match, which was a great match. And I was like, that could be one of my favourite women's matches of the year, and it was second behind Rhea and Charlotte. And then the men came out, so we had Tyler Bate, Bron Breakker, Josh Briggs, Dijak, and Trick Williams. And oh my God, did this match change my mind? The concept itself, there is still little bits that I'm not a huge fan of, but the last, as you alluded to, the last sort of 2-3 minutes of the match, as a whole, threw in so much drama that I actually didn't remember leaning forward and sitting on the edge of my sofa while watching it because I was that engrossed in the match. I was sat like that watching it with a beer, and I ended up, what's going on? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Who's going to win? And it was just so entertaining that I've gone back and watched that match, even though it was only, a month ago? Not far off.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. I've got the actual match up. December the 9th, so it was like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I think I've gone and watched it 3 times because I was just gripped from absolute minute to minute. And it was, if you like your sports entertainment, it does all of that. But the guys in the ring do put on an absolute incredible show, and you'll get the unbelievable drama at the end. It is a 30-minute near enough action movie. It is that good. So if you haven't been an NXT fan, this match should change your mind.
Yeah, and I mean, like, even for myself, I this is one of the matches I had on my list and thought I'll go elsewhere just to round it out, because when you look at the names that are on there. Yes, Bron Breakker is probably the strongest and the most well established on NXT now, and you can maybe make a case that he would have been a favorite. You've got Tyler Bate, who, although he's been in NXT UK as a champion a couple of times, he's never really hit the heights that he did there over on NXT as well. And then you had Josh Briggs in his first big match as a solo performer. Dijak, who's kind of skirted with it a few times, but never really had his big moment. And then Trick Williams, who's really hot with the crowd. But each one of them brought something different. Each one of them was believable, that there was a reason why they might end up winning. There's little things like, to make the ending make sense, you have to have people on the same amount and chasing the win as well. Otherwise, that falls apart. So the match was a sum of its parts, but it was, the entirety of it was fantastic as well. And you were just, when you think Trick was out of it, and maybe they'll go down the route of, he's a lovable loser because he had his shot at the big time but didn't quite grasp it and actually came out of it quite badly with no wins, suddenly flip-flopping, and that last 2 minutes, just seeing the crowd realize what they're seeing unfold, was quite a special moment, especially for Trick, but for fans as well. But yeah, no one came out of this badly. No. And it was just one of those ones that's testament to go, okay, I do understand why they're doing that match format, and there is a place for it moving forward. I don't know if we have to see it every year, but I'm not mad if we do, especially if as much thought goes behind it as this. And the good news is I still think there's different ways to play this in the future as well. There's different aspects to this match, like putting them in, the shark cage thing, the penalty box thing that they have, that can play a little bit more of a part. Do you have someone get a victory early on and basically run around the ring trying to avoid anyone getting anything, just splitting up pins and doing nothing else? There's a lot of character work that can go into this, and they absolutely nailed it in 2023. So another fantastic pick. I was
going to say, I did just have a quick look on the Wikipedia page for it. In the last 1 minute and 14 seconds, there is 4 pinfalls.
Yeah.
So
which just works time-wise because of how they do it, where you have to enter the penalty box for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And I think you said it over on the Gimme Ho Yeah one last week. You can't, there's no way to work gimmick this out. The timing is always moving. So if one person had missed the spot, they didn't have long to play with it. I think they ended up having 2 seconds left at the end. So they maybe could have gone an extra second or two, but you really don't want to cut it quite that fine. But for the way for it to have played out and the way that they couldn't, they had to do it exactly straight and exactly on point for their timings. Everyone had to be perfect. So for 5 guys to do that, very, very well done. And I also picked a multi-man match to round out my list, which is the Elimination Chamber from the same pay-per-view that we saw earlier on, Premium Live event, where we had Sammy versus Roman. I went for the US title match where we had Montez Ford, Johnny Gargano, we had Bronson Reed, we had the champion Austin Theory, we had Seth Rollins, and we had Mr. Money in the Bank himself now, or Senor Money in the Bank now, of Damian Priest. The reason why I picked this, quite frankly, was because this is at a time where the creatives seem to be ramping back up again. People who hadn't really had a chance to shine were actually starting to feature a little bit more. And this match in particular featured, everyone who featured on this match got a time to shine and really kind of show who they are. Probably more so for Johnny Gargano and for Bronson Reed than anyone else. But this was the one where people were like, oh, maybe Montez Ford could be a singles competitor. And he certainly gave a good account of himself. The crowd were really behind him. But Johnny, who was over on NXT, super over on NXT, some might even call him Mr. NXT. This was his big moment. I love that spot where him and Seth were sat back to back on top of one of the pods. And then they jump off together, and they kind of had a little bit of a scrap before that. That's a match I'd love to see them revisit in the future, is Johnny Gargano versus Seth Rollins. Maybe if they do that in 2024, that might feature on my top 5 for that year. So it'd be interesting to see if they go that route. Bronson Reed looked like an absolute monster, the way he should be. I actually think out of everyone, he's had a very strong showing over on the main roster. They're just making sure people know he's a big guy, but he can move. His tsunami finishing move looks great. It's a body splash off the top rope, but a guy of his size, it will do some damage. So him versus Ivar, they've had a couple of great matches as well. He managed to show just what big guys in 2023 should be and do in a match. Austin Theory weaseled his way to a win thanks to Logan Paul, which set up the Seth Rollins versus Logan Paul match at WrestleMania. I was quite surprised. I was going to ask you at the end. Seth Rollins doesn't feature in any one-on-one matches on any of our lists. So it was interesting to see that. As here's a stat for you. As you know, I like to bring a stat to these shows. Seth Rollins is the only person in WWE, and of course he is, to have featured on every single Premium Live event this year. So Mr.
No, you get stats out for us, Andy.
I know, you love it. And Damian Priest, who kind of had a quiet start to the year and has built up and has become one of the mainstays of Raw. Obviously has the Money in the Bank, so it looks like he'll have an exciting at least start to 2024 as well. But he again had a very strong showing here. But this match was all about establishing Austin Theory as a proper sniveling little piece of shit, because we're far enough in that I can say that anyway. Seth Rollins also set up his match with Logan Paul, which again, arguably could have been on any of our lists, because I thought that was a fantastic match at WrestleMania 39, and excited to see what Logan Paul achieves in 2024. And whether Seth Rollins gets his match with Cody Rhodes, what am I talking about? With CM Punk at WrestleMania 40, which again, you can hear us talking about last week, so go check that out. But Elimination Chamber US title match was my pick. So we have a nice finish to the show today, where Sam is going to talk to us about one of something we don't talk about enough on this channel, which was Impact Wrestling, soon to be back to TNA, but Impact Wrestling delivered at Bound for Glory, Impact World Championship match between Alex Shelley and Josh Alexander. Here he is, Mr. TNA himself, Sam, who's going to round off our 15 matches.
Yeah, so this was great. People might not know this, but Josh Alexander, who I got to interview in Manchester. I actually said then. Yes, interview in Manchester a few months ago, earlier this year. Lovely guy. I got to hold the TNA Championship, bloody heavy. And I said to him, how far do you think I'd get if I ran off with this before you catch me and put me in an ankle lock? So we had a little bit of a giggle there. But yeah, he was the champ. It was a long road to him becoming the champ, and then he got injured and had to relinquish. Alex Shelley ended up holding it, and by the time Josh came back, everyone thought, "All right, presumably they're going to put it back on Josh now because he's the chosen one, he's the golden boy." And this match was all about proving that Shelley isn't an interim champion, and they actually played into that in the story as well. And Shelley got quite insecure about it as a character, and that became the story of the match. Like, no, just because you're back doesn't mean I'm lying down for you, mate. I am the champion because I've earned it, and I'm going to keep being the champion until we're called TNA again. And that's exactly what he did. He defeated Josh in one hell of an awesome match. A bit of a styles clash as well, because Alex is part of the Motor City Machine Guns. They're known for their tag team prowess and their high flying and their fast paced action. Where Alexander is a technical guy, an old school wrestler's wrestler. He puts you out by hard hitting moves and by, putting you in knots and submissions. He's not a guy you want to get caught by. So it was a great playoff between the two styles. But another good thing about it as well is Shelley, is both men obviously had something to prove, but for Shelley, this was a longer thing. Shelley also needed to demonstrate that a guy who'd been associated with TNA for so long was world championship material and had to back it up. So we also had here the old school TNA of Alex Shelley up against this new Anthem Sports Impact Wrestling era in Josh Alexander. And by the time this match finished, we got the revelation that TNA was coming back. It was almost like those two universes collided. And then we got so it was nice to see that. They knew exactly what they were doing when they were writing it, when they were booking this, when they were padding out the match. Again, it was babyface versus babyface. But both men got a little bit dark and played mind games with the other. I felt Shelley had kind of got into it as the heel only because he had been almost, the assumption was, oh, you're just going to drop the belt now, aren't you? And that made him wild. So, and it was also just a banger of a match, and people need to go and watch it. I think if you're an Ultimate Insider for Impact, so you pay like $5 on YouTube, you can watch it there. So you don't need to buy the pay-per-view if you don't want to. You can pay just a cut price for a pint. You can go and watch it on YouTube, the entire show. And I'd fully recommend it. And I just think it's great to have some TNA representation here. There's a bunch. I also had a list for the girls' matches and the guys' matches as well, by the way. I do have that in front of me. So I don't want to do side of service. He did text me and say, here's a list of the men's. He did have a women's one as well, which some of them have already featured. Exactly. So we can leave it. We can kind of leave it there because. Actually, there's a shout out for one. I'd like to.
I will read it very quickly because I know which one Sam's going to be referring to. But the women's elimination chamber match, which we have already. We haven't covered that one. Money in the Bank match as well over in London, which was great. Oscar versus Bianca Belair at Night of Champions. He had the women's War Games match, which we have covered. And then I'm presuming the one that he wants to give a special mention to is Athena versus Billy Starks at Final Battle as well. Actually, Dan nodding along. So if you want to have it just very briefly.
Very quickly. Yeah, just for me this year, the multi-man matches, the women nailed that. Be it the Royal Rumble, the Elimination Chamber, War Games. It was all about the women this year for me in those matches. So this one here, this Athena versus Billy Starks. This has been the most interesting thing about Ring of Honor in recent months. This feud, a little bit Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn in a way. Like Athena's the champ, she's kind of bullying Billy Starks. Billy Starks eventually stood up to her. They had an amazing match where the heels still won, but they got on the same page by the end of it. And Billy Starks earned Athena's respect. Now, I actually think a lot of people thought Billy Starks was winning this because it was going to be a great way to really cement her star, but quite like Becky Lynch and Tiffany Stratton, the younger person didn't need to win it to go over to become a star after this. Athena is kind of carrying Ring of Honor at the moment. Athena and Eddie Kingston together, should I say. And this was just this main evented that final battle, Ring of Honor's last pay-per-view of the year this year, and for good reason. Eddie Kingston was on the card, but he wasn't defending that title because he was defending it on AEW, which is also played into the storyline with Athena, because Athena is now calling out Eddie Kingston for being a paper champion. So it's again, if you're not watching Ring of Honor for this stuff alone, get watching it. Just great. I thought I really had to shout that out before we draw to a close.
Absolutely. But as you can see in front of you, there is Dan's, there's mine, there is Sam's top 5. So as you can see, please read there. We've gone through them. We've spoken about them. If you joined us late on, thank you very much for joining anyway. But yeah, go back and watch when we talk about each of them. But thank you very much for watching along, and thank you guys as well, because I've thoroughly enjoyed learning about what the wrestling fans want. And the good thing is there's a good variety there across different promotions, different in terms of whether it's pure wrestling, whether it's character driven, whether it's story driven. There really is something for every wrestling fan in 2023. But yeah, thank you very much to everyone. And as Danny said there, Happy New Year to everyone. We are just days away from 2024. We're not quite finished. There is one more wrestling event this year to finish off for AEW. I believe, are you guys covering that on Give Me a Hell Yeah?
I don't know yet. I think I'm out. Sure. So I might struggle, but we'll see. Let's see what we can do.
Well, the best way to find out is to subscribe to Give Me a Hell Yeah and get that notification bell on. So if you are an AEW fan, look at that. There's everything. If you are a fan of AEW and you want to watch along with the guys on Give Me a Hell Yeah, I know Ant's the AEW kind of guy over on the channel, but go hit the subscribe button, put your notifications on. You can watch along with Ant or any of the team who could be there. Not putting him on the spot. But yeah, subscribe to that channel. Big shout out to Scott and the boys over on Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling as well. Thanks to Dean over on Scenescape Shop. He will cover your artist needs. If you want to have a watch along with him, you can watch him painting and drawing, and you can also then go purchase what he's doing as well, or ask for a commission to be made. But Dean's a great guy and deserves all the support he can get. He's looking forward to a great 2024, and so am I. But I just wanted to say thank you to end the year. We're over 100 subscribers. Thanks to the likes of Dan and Sam for joining, and everyone who supports the channel. But it means a lot to me that people watch these videos and listen to our rants on a weekly basis. We like to try and keep it positive. We like to try and have a bit of a chat about the big talking points of wrestling without really going into any kind of rumor or innuendo or gossip, etc. We just like to chat about wrestling. We're just 3 normal guys. And it means a lot to me that you would listen or watch us talk about it as well. And I'd love to hear your opinion. So if you're watching this after the fact, drop us a comment. Let us know what your favourite match of 2023 has been, or let us know your favourite moment of 2023. And if you want to, let us know what you think 2024 is going to be about. Should we expect Seth Rollins versus CM Punk to feature on our list next year? Will we see Roman versus Cody Part 2? Will the story ever be complete? And yeah, so really looking forward to next year, and hopefully we can grow the channel together. But thank you for being in with me at the end of 2023. And for now, all there is left to say in 2023 one last time was I've been Andy, he's been Dan, he's been Sam. This has been Wrestling Royalty.